You're going to record, Barry? Okay.
Yep.
So welcome everyone to the foundation course, Buddhist Path of Awakening, as we work our way through volume 1 of the Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma by Chogyam Trungpa. Tonight we are dealing with chapters describing sitting meditation and meditation in general. As long as I've been doing this, I still find these chapters revelatory, teaching me things I hadn't really quite realized. So we'll start tonight with Barry doing the first chapter, and then I'll follow. Barry?
Okay. I guess I should spotlight myself. All right. Yeah, this chapter is breathing out. And I share that experience with John. These chapters are going into great detail on sitting meditation practice. And it's been very interesting to me. Anyway, he begins by saying you should try to just go along with the breath you have. It is important to breathe normally. Now, breathe normally sounds kind of like a no-brainer, but like with a lot of other things, there can be little twists and turns that come up. And I know that some of you may have had experience with certain kinds of breathing disciplines or maybe a pranayama and yoga. I've heard people talk about taking 2 short breaths, long breaths, something like that, or breathing from different parts of your body. But in this practice, we don't do any of that. Just let it go. Actually, it would just be a distraction. So this is normal breathing. If you've been physically active when you come to meditation, you're breathing very fast, just let your breathing return to normal all on its own. Relax and just be with it. So he says, in meditation practice, you place your attention on the out breath. As you are breathing, you just go out with the breath and the breath dissolves. As you breathe in, you wait, then go out again. When thoughts come, you label them thinking. Now, labeling your thoughts thinking is actually the subject of the next chapter that John will be going over. Now, when thoughts come, just return the attention to the breath. Now, he says you have to be very precise about the whole thing. You can't miss an inch. You should not think twice, thinking that you are thinking. Thinking that you are thinking. And this is an example of the kind of odd stuff that can go on. And it's also a demonstration of what we call the watcher, that you recognize you're thinking and you label it thinking, and then you watch yourself thinking about labeling it thinking. He says you have to be right on the dot. Excuse me. When you breathe, you are utterly there, properly there. As you breathe out, you dissolve or diffuse. Then you come back to your posture and you are ready for another out breath. Over and over, you come back to the posture, breathe out, come back again. So this is the practice. And sometimes there's some misunderstanding about that the practice is achieving some kind of experience or state. The practice really is just realizing that you're thinking and coming back in one way or another. The way that's done, the names that are given to it can change, but that is the practice. Now he says right on the dot, which is that it means being fully engaged, that doing the practice as it's described and nothing else. There's no improvising here. It's simple, direct, precise. You just do it. And after all, the Hinayana is the yana of precision and of details. So especially at the beginning, some of you here, several of you here have been at this for a while, but even when just beginning a sitting meditation or if the mind is very active, it's important to treat this with real respect for precision and details, to get it just right, that it's necessary to kind of tighten up, to pay attention, like keep your eyes on the road and both hands on the wheel, staying right here. But then what about the fact that we keep saying that this is a practice of no effort and you need to relax? So this precision, this tightening up is necessary to stay on course by limiting our choices. And in limiting our choices, this allows the mind to settle in, that there's not room to go off and do whatever. And strangely enough, this actually, by limiting the choices, allows the mind to relax, allows us to relax and settle down. And then we can loosen up a bit. So this is another place where, not too tight, not too loose, just managing it. He has a section here, learning how to let go. He says, as you practice, you should keep it very simple. After each breath goes out, there is a gap. Not a big drop, just a gap. That gap could be felt. You might feel it as a moment of waiting or expectation or being ready for the next out-breath. And the word gap is used here, and we use it when we have our meditations and someone is guiding it. We'll say, go out, dissolve, and then gap. But the gap isn't really a thing or something to achieve. It's just a moment between breaths. It's a moment where nothing is happening. That going out with the out breath has a quality of action, of movement. And then at the end of that, at the end of the out breath, that stops. And then you're just here. And it can be a moment of simple awareness, a moment without the watcher. It can even be, who knows? Or it can just be a moment of resting, waiting for the next breath. And the thing is, don't get hung up on it. I myself certainly used to worry about that, the gap. Am I experiencing the gap? It's just a moment of resting. Stay with the precision of shamatha. Go with the breath, dissolve, relax, out breath again and again. The out breath is connected with the idea of letting go. He says you are always breathing out. And that's important too. It has to do with letting go of fixations, of need to do anything, letting go. Now, going ahead a little bit, light touch. He says the practice of shamatha is environmental as well as technique oriented. In shamatha practice, a 25% touch of awareness on the breath seems to be about right. So we're not concentrating on the breath, it's a light touch. In any case, he says, you can't do more than that because you keep your eyes open, you see things, your ears are not clogged, so you hear things. So, awareness of the breath, following it out and dissolving, is just an awareness, not a total absorption. Awareness of our environment does not go away. And I'd like to say a little bit about this aspect of our practice that Jogam Trungpa Rinpoche's presentation of shamatha is actually a hybrid of shamatha and vipassana, of mindfulness and awareness. That shamatha is a practice of one-pointed concentration, and usually done with the eyes closed, using some object of meditation like a mantra, it could be a candle flame, whatever. And it tends to be an internal process and can be quite beneficial on its own. But it does tend to be an insular practice. And a lot of what he is presenting here and going into the precise details of posture, of breath, of the gaze, all of this is very much in the realm of shamatha meditation. But then there is this element of awareness or vipassana, going out with the breath and dissolving, that he has just said, environmental as well as technique oriented. They're bringing in the environment, that having 25% of your awareness on the breath, and also just keeping the eyes open. These are all part of this hybrid of bringing vipassana or awareness meditation into shamatha. So I believe that traditionally practitioners would stay with shamatha meditation for a long time until they're deemed to have tamed the wildness of their mind before moving on. No? Okay. But anyway, this is a source of some confusion sometimes because he seems to be saying one thing and then another. So attention on the breath can become a lighter touch. The eyes can remain open, the gaze directed somewhere that is not distracting, because this might be challenging at times. You're trying to do several things at the same time, sort of. You have a light touch on the breath while remaining aware of everything else, of all the sense perceptions. Now, he goes on to say, that is a natural situation. You exist as a human being, and your sense perceptions are operating everywhere all the time. The idea of shamatha is to narrow all that down into 25% awareness of the breath as a way of training yourself. There it is. You may find, he says, that as you are keeping your heedfulness on breathing, the thinking process continues to freely function at the same time. Once you develop a feeling of the rhythm of the breath, you can be aware of the breathing and at the same time entertain yourself with all kinds of thoughts. This, I think, we may have all experienced this at some point in meditation, that you can actually be there following the breath, and then at the same time starting to think about things. And he says that um, the problem with this approach, by the way, it is not regarded as a problem at the beginning, is that it is a sign you are not properly in contact with the breathing. So this is a case where it's too loose, that need to tighten up a little bit here, that need to bring the attention back a little more firmly to the breath, and then open to awareness of your surroundings. Now, in this next section, counting breaths, he gives a detailed description of the technique of counting breaths and then goes on to discourage its use. That said, counting breaths can be a useful technique at times, especially for someone very new to the practice, or if the mind is very wild and agitated, it can be a way to really kind of take a firm hold on things, to give yourself something very clear, to actually count the breaths. But aside from that, it's best to dispense with it if possible. I think of it as like if you're walking down a flight of stairs, you have a hand railing there, counting breaths is kind of as if you were gripping it firmly. And then at some point you can begin to relax and simply have the awareness of the breath, and it becomes more like just trailing your hand along a railing. Mindfulness of breathing, he says, is a way of creating obstacles to subconscious dreams and mental activities. The technique of mindfulness should provide obstacles. Yeah. And he says, unless you are able to do that efficiently, you will not get properly bored. And if you do not get properly bored, you will not be in tune with the power of the practice. Everything may be happening very smoothly on the surface level, but you are not in tune with the magic of meditation practice or the spiritual energy of the lineage. And we have talked about this in the past, this boredom, which of course we normally associate it with an unpleasant or negative experience of being restless and antsy, and that's hot boredom. What's presented here is cool boredom, and that's the name of this section. And cool boredom is, we get hot boredom because there's nothing to do and we feel the need to be doing something, and therefore there's this agitation and frustration, restlessness. But if you just sit with that and let it be, that it can cool and there can be a relaxation, and you can really then start to settle in to the experience of not doing, of having nothing to do. He says in here somewhere that it's related to like the experience of like a mountain. And this is cool boredom. It's the experience of really being completely okay with simply being present and not being pulled around or jerked or knocked off of your perch, so to speak, by this mind that keeps saying that there's got to be something that needs to be done. He says, boredom is important because boredom is anti-credential, anti-entertainment. And as we develop greater psychological sophistication, we begin to appreciate such boredom. It becomes cool and refreshing like a mountain river. And he says, and I believe this is that very real, genuine boredom or cool boredom plays an extremely important role. In fact, we can quite simply say that the barometer of our accomplishment in meditation practice is how much boredom we can create for ourselves. In other words, you're settled. You're just here. Cool boredom is rather light boredom. It has an uneasy quality, but at the same time, it is not a big deal. Cool boredom is simply another expression of the experience of well-being. And that's what he closes with. So, John?
Thank you, Barry. So, just to recap a couple of the high points of this chapter that Barry just did. We do out-breath. Our attention is on the out-breath, and he talks about 25-75. 25% of your awareness is on the out-breath, 75% is on everything else, the body, the environment, the space. So the out-breath is like a highlight going out into this space, 25% on the out-breath. Out-breath, dissolve, and at the end you just let go, gap, and repeat. Out-breath, dissolve, gap, let go, and repeat. This is the combination of shamatha and vipassana. The shamatha is the 25% on the breath. The vipassana is the 75% awareness of the environment in which the breath goes out, going out like a line drawn on water. There's the water, there's the line. So it's this wonderful point about boredom that Barry made, that boredom is important because it's anti-credential, anti-entertainment. The greater the it produces greater psychological sophistication. And then this whole point that he talked about much more in other places than in here about cool boredom, about the boredom becoming refreshing. And in the beginning, the boredom is hot, like you're sitting there thinking, oh, this is so boring. I wish I were watching television or talking with a friend or whatever it might be. And then after a while, the boredom becomes cool and refreshing, like a mountain stream, he used to say. And then he says this marvelous statement. In fact, we could say that the barometer of our accomplishment in meditation is how much boredom we create for ourselves. Chapter 27, labeling thoughts. I've been doing this 50 years. I feel like I'm still just learning some of this. He says, labeling thoughts is optional, but here he's really recommending it. He said, when we sit, 80% dealing with thoughts is pretty good. So don't beat yourself up for having them. After all, that's just another thought. When you beat yourself up for having thoughts, you regard every mental event as thinking. And you can actually say that to yourself, thinking. And when you say that, thinking, it's not like you're pounding, like you're saying, oh, I'm a bad meditator or anything like that. It's simply acknowledging. It's because when we are having the thought, usually, often, we're not even aware of it. We're just busy with the thought, thinking about, talking to our friend in Schenectady or wherever it may be. And then as soon as you realize that you're thinking, you're back. And so you say thinking in acknowledgement of that. He said it includes emotions and every little movement of mind. No matter how degenerate or how profound the thought is, no matter how connected to reality, it is just thinking. It's a thought, another one, a form of self-entertainment. He says, in terms of practice, it doesn't matter whether you're having monstrous thoughts or benevolent thoughts, sinful or virtuous thoughts. Any thought is just thinking. So please don't be shocked by your thoughts, and don't think that any thought deserves a gold medal. Don't evaluate your thoughts. Doubt is just a thought, powerful, but still just a thought. So if you're doubting yourself, how well you're meditating, let that go too, because that's just a thought. Likewise, guilt. So you're not analyzing your thoughts. You're not building a case history. You're not trying to think of something profound. It is like the sun and the rain and the snow. These thoughts are just weather. That's almost like a slogan you could write and put on your refrigerator. Thoughts are just weather. They come and they go. Later in the third volume of the Profound Treasury, he says you absolutely don't need them. They're just stuff. I love that. It's just weather. We treasure our thoughts. We give them such credence, such importance. And here he is saying they're just weather. And in Buddhist psychology, there are 52 different kinds of thoughts. He's referring here to the Hinayana, in the Tripitaka. There's the Sutra Pitaka, the Sutra Basket, which contains the conversations that the Buddha had with his students. There is the Vinaya Pitaka, which lays out all the rules for behavior of lay people, monks, nuns, and everything in between. And then there's the Abhidharma Pitaka, which lays out the structure of mind. And in that, it details all of the things which we experience, moments of experience. Some of them are mental, and there are 52 kinds of mental experiences, thoughts. And they're all just thoughts. With that key, you begin to find that you can handle life as it happens around you, he says. The traditional technique is to note them and label all those thoughts as thinking mentally, which gives you leverage to come back to the breath. When you're lost in a thought, then you realize it, you're back. You say thinking and recognize that you are back and return to the breath and space. So it's very simple. We just see that we're thinking. We weren't aware of it because we were lost in the thought. Then we become aware of it. You label it thinking. And where are you? You're back just like you are right now as you listen to these words coming out of this mouth and seeing this image on the screen. You're present. We know when we're present. We know when we're right here, not lost in thought. And that's what we come back to. He says you don't regard yourself as good or bad. You are just you, thinking and coming back to the breath. You're not trying to push thoughts away, nor are you trying to cultivate them. You just see them, label them thinking, and then you're back to the breath. It's so simple. So you're not trying to push them away. Doubt is just a thought and guilt is just a thought. I've said that already. Whatever thought comes up, you just label it thinking and return to the breath. Then he says it's more about weather. Seeing your thoughts is like seeing rain, snow, a hailstorm, or a cloudy day. It's just weather. You say thinking, and this gives you tremendous leverage to come back to the breath. When a thought takes you over completely so that you're not even on the cushion, but somewhere else, in San Francisco or New York City, as soon as you notice, you say thinking and bring yourself back to the breath. You don't regard yourself as good or bad. You are just you, thinking and coming back to the breath. You're not trying to push thoughts away, nor are you trying to cultivate them. You're just labeling them, thinking. Just come back. Abruptness is necessary. You come back abruptly, the breath. Remarks about it are a waste of time, he says. We're returning from dreaming to awareness. Whether a thought is pleasant or unpleasant, profound or trivial, doesn't matter. You just label it thinking and come back to the breath. What we're doing is we're changing our allegiance from our thoughts and all that they contain, letting that go. And we're giving our allegiance to this awareness right now, here, without comment, without interpretation. It's very radical. You can do it. You might find it scary. You can say, well, am I giving up my understanding of meaning of life? Just do it on the cushion. Experience that, of letting go of those thoughts, regarding them as weather, and coming back to this. The breath goes out. It's like a highlight, 25%. The space is 75%. It goes out, dissolves, and then there's just this space. If you seem to be working with the breathing and having thoughts at the same time, that means you're unable to identify completely with your breath. There's some deception in thinking that you can work with the thoughts and the breath at the same time. Everything is thinking. We just label it thinking as in, I think I have a mosquito on my face, and you label that thinking. We have to accept that all experiences are just thought patterns. All these kinds of experiences. We don't think about what you are going to get out of meditation. Just do it. Everything comes up in your mind is just thought process. It is thinking. When you sit, you should think. There are no non-thoughts. Even techniques are thoughts. That is straight shamatha, without soda or ice. He's talking about not getting into the Mahayana yet, of emptiness. You just see them, those thoughts, you label them thinking, and then you come back to the breath going out. The second chapter is called Touch and Go. What makes mindfulness possible is mind's awareness of itself. This is called self-awareness, rangrik in Tibetan. It's very profound. You're aware that you're aware. So right now, you can be aware that you're aware of this image on your computer screen and of the posture that you've got in your seat. You're aware of all that without effort. You just come back to it. That's rangrik. It's self-awareness. Mindfulness in this sense is based on a sense of being and individuality. It isn't mechanical. Touch and go. You touch or contact the experience of actually being there or here, and then you let go. So we could do it right now. We come back to this, we touch it, we let the touch go, and here it is. That touch and go process applies to your awareness of the breath and also to your awareness of day-to-day living. With the breath goes out, you are aware of it, that's the touch. It dissolves and you let go. And then there's just this, the space. So it's 25-75. 25% awareness of the breath, 75% awareness of the environment around the breath. He says, touch is the sense of existence, that you are who you are. You have a sense that you are there or here, and you are sitting. The go part is that you don't hang on to it. You do not sustain your sense of being, but you let it go. You just let go of it. However, if you hang on to that awareness, then it becomes grasping. So you touch and go. You just let go of yourself completely, halfway through. There's the feeling of the breath going out, you let go, and then there's just this. He says the approach of touch and go is not so much trying to experience, but just trying to be. Isn't that something? That we don't have to experience something in particular, like something profound. We're just being. We're doing it all the time. And we come back to that. He says you touch this, and then you intentionally disown the experience so you don't bottle things up within yourself. That seems to be the basic point of touch and go. The breath goes out, dissolves, and you let go. There's just here and now, whatever it happens to be. The next section is called a sense of being. In this mindfulness practice in touch and go, there is a sensation of individuality, of personhood. The breath goes out, dissolves, and there's this. This is the individuality. This is the personhood. It's very simple. You're actually here. You exist. You might be concerned about selflessness and egohood, but you let the guru and the sangha take care of that. Shunyata. Let go of worries about the future and just do the touch and go directly and simply. We're just coming back to the simple awareness of the present moment. He says, when you commit yourself to the Dharma, you're asking somebody to mind your business, which could happen very heavy-handedly. That's the guru. So you do not need to feel too much concern about future security. You just do it. You just do the practice. And finally, acknowledging states of mind. So touch, remember touch and go, also applies to mindfulness of your individual states of mind, aggression, lust, etc. Such states have to be acknowledged, but not pushed off or away. You need to look at them, painful memories of the past, present, or thoughts about the future, without suppression or shying away, and then come back to your breath. That is extremely important. So you don't suppress or throw away. You just acknowledge them, see them, and come back to your breath. Touch them, and then go. Come back to the breath going out into space and release. You might use coming back to the breath as a way of avoiding problems, avoiding upsets and turmoil in your mind. But such avoidance is itself a problem. It's a kind of spiritual materialism. So don't do that. It's kind of a way to patch over your problems, bottling up your problems, keeping them as a family heirloom, he says. It's very important to look at those embarrassments and then come back to the breath. So when you have these thoughts, you don't just sort of try and suppress them or junk them or sit on them or stamp on them. You see them, whatever they may be. It might be an embarrassing thought of all kinds. And then you realize, say, thinking, and you come back to the breath going out, dissolving, and then here we are. In doing so, there's no implication that if you do look at them, that is going to be freedom or the end of the game. You need to look at them without expectation of release from them or anything else. Giving up the expectation, just seeing them. This is all about awareness. It says your greatest problem is not that you are an aggressive or lusty person. The problem is that you would like to bottle those things up and put them aside. You have become an expert at that kind of control and deception, self-deception. Meditation practice is supposed to uncover anything and everything, all self-deceptions. It's not about becoming pure, becoming better, becoming good, becoming whatever. It's just about relaxing into this awareness. So you should experience your aggressive thoughts. He says, look at them. This doesn't mean that you should act on them to execute your aggression. When you do act, unless you have looked at such thoughts, you will not act properly. However, if you look at your aggressive thoughts, you do not usually put them into practice, but they dwindle. So we could have a discussion. Is this new? It is for me, I gotta tell you. I mean, there are elements of it that really are. It just, personally, I can't hear it enough that the point is not to correct myself, to become a better person, but just to see it. You see the thought, it dissipates, it dissolves, and then you come back to this here. It goes out, dissolves, and here we are. And when you say thinking, when you realize you've been thinking and you say thinking, it's just a way of waking up.
John,
Jill.
clarification on touch and go. Touch is perceiving, here, this, and go is letting that awareness go, right? You're not trying to cling to the awareness of here.
Or of anything.
Or anything.
It might be awareness of a thought. It might be awareness of a pain in your knee. And you realize that you're having it. That's the touch. And then you let it go and you come back to the technique of going out with the breath and dissolving into space. 75-25 or 25-75, that'd be better to say.
But eventually, aren't you supposed to linger in awareness? Isn't that a more evolved stage in the practice that's coming up down the road?
It is, but if you say that to yourself, you're going to be hard on yourself. You're going to say, oh, I should, be letting go more. I should be resting in space more. You just do this. It happens naturally. It's a natural evolution. This is shamatha vipassana, the hybrid that Barry mentioned. It's the hybrid. The shamatha is the breath, and the vipassana is the space that it's going out into. And it's 25-75. 25% on the breath, 75% on the space. Eventually, you'll just start resting in the space, but it'll happen very naturally. You don't have to, if you try to force it, it's all screwed up. I can't hear you, Jill, for some reason.
Can't you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay, but eventually you'll end up resting in the space, but that's resting in touch then.
It's resting, resting in the go, you might say. You've gone.
No, wait, I thought touch was awareness of here, this, now.
It is, but you're touching it. You're making it into something concrete, something that you can touch. And then the breath goes out. You're touching the breath, and the breath goes out. It dissolves, and there's just this.
No. But when you dissolve, when the breath dissolves, what you're calling gap, I thought that was just another way of saying touch,
No,
because
no,
that,
that's letting go.
but that gap, in that gap, you are aware of this here now. No?
The touch is the breath going out. The breath dissolves, and then there's just, like right now, you're aware of me. That's simple. You weren't thinking about it. You were just doing it.
But tell me again, where was the touch in that?
The touch, it was in, if you were following the breath out into this, there is the touch. And then the breath dissolves, and then there's just this. Without self-reflection, without self-consciousness.
Okay, so this is go.
This is the go. And it's also the gap,
Yes, okay.
a letting go. That go
Okay,
is
okay,
letting go, you know?
See, the touch, there's a sense of volition. You're doing something. It's like an action, to bring your awareness to something, and then you let it go.
So the breath, you're aware of the breath, that's the touch. The breath goes out, it dissolves, and there's just this. That's the go.
Thank you.
Letting go.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So he mentioned doing this in day-to-day life. Would an example of that be, for example, I'm meeting with someone and periodically I just notice my bottom in the chair, the sensation of the air on my skin, whatever, and just notice it and then go back to the flow of the conversation or something? Would that be an example of touch and go?
I'm not sure. What do you think,
Okay.
Barry? I mean, I take this as being a description of sitting meditation and not meditation in action in everyday life.
Yes, it's pretty clear here. All of these chapters right here are very focused just on sitting meditation. Starting with posture last week, and then the breath, touch and go. Although, I mean, what you're talking about there it is a kind of touch and go, but I don't think that's what he's talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, in everyday life, we're really dealing with the go. We're dealing with what happens after you go, which is the awareness of this, coming back to that from our dreams. But this is really a description of sitting meditation, working with the breath going out, dissolving, gap. This is really one thing that's terrific about these chapters, and I encourage you to go over it again, is that it defines what he means by gap. Gap is letting go of self-consciousness, so that when you come back, when you breathe in, you're not doing anything really. It's a gap. You have no responsibility for that. It just happens automatically, the in-breath.
I loved that actually, because I've always had this little confusion about what does gap mean.
No, but you're saying that the gap includes the in-breath?
In sitting meditation, yeah, I think so.
He says that, yes. To him, the gap is just at the end of the out breath, then there's just this period of time until the next out breath.
Yeah.
And that's the gap.
No, I thought the gap was just a very brief moment when you are in total unself-conscious awareness of here now.
Yes.
And it was, yes, but it's just brief. It does not last for the time. As soon as you have it, then it's over with. It doesn't last for the time that it takes you to get an in-breath, does it?
And it depends. It's unpredictable, and you don't try to predict that or control that. You just let it happen. Always. It's always a matter of relaxing into it and of not trying to measure it and control it and judge yourself for it. And
Oh, well, okay, but as far as measure and control, I mean, this is the same guy who's saying 25%, 75%. So,
yeah, but that's just it's figurative, it's
well,
trying to give you a guide, sort of a feel for it. What he's saying is that the breath is going out like a highlight in the middle in your awareness is here in the space, wide like this. And then the breath is going out like a highlight in it, 25%, while your awareness is here, 75. It's figurative speech, He doesn't mean it literally in any way. Yeah?
There is a kind of a tension there actually, because a lot of this is very specific and very 25, 75, but at the same time, Jill, you're supposed to be relaxed. We've talked about there being no effort and all that, but there has to be some kind of precision and attention to detail, especially at the beginning, to do it right. Basically, that's not a good word to use, but to really understand the practice and be able to do it properly. And then relaxation become more and more part of it as it becomes a natural thing that you just do.
I mean, we tend not to be aware of the ground of our experience. It's like I watched him in a teaching that was really more advanced than this. He went up to a blackboard. He was teaching a bunch of sleepy CU students, and he drew a picture of a bird, stick figure of a bird flying on the blackboard. And he said, "What's that a picture of?" And of course, nobody wanted to answer. It was so obvious. And finally, some kid said, "It's a picture of a bird." And he said, "It's a picture of the sky." That is the breath is going out, and we are not just focused on the breath. If you are, then you're practicing shamatha. That's shamatha meditation, one-pointed focus on an object. But in this kind of meditation, this hybrid, we're aware of the space, the blackboard, the sky, that the breath is going out into, like that bird. So we have our awareness here, 75 and 25% is the breath going out into it, like the bird on the blackboard, like the bird flying in the sky. He's encouraging us to be aware of the ground as well as the figure. The figure is the breath, the ground is this awareness of the space.
John, I'm newer to this than most folks. The impression I got when I was doing the reading is that the touch, that breath was the thing that brings us fully into the present, and then we just experience it. You touch, bring yourself fully into the present, experience that in the gap, and then get back to and then that's what it read for me.
Yeah, you touch the breath, you're aware of the breath as it goes out. The breath literally is going out and dissolving. That's what breath does, right? And you are going out and letting it dissolve. And when it's completely dissolved at the end of the out breath, here we are, right here in this big open space. You see? So the breath is going out 25%. It's like a highlight, like a line drawn on water, or like that bird in the sky flying along. And it's going out and it dissolves, and there's just this, whatever happens to be here. Is that clear, or is that muddy? You see, right now, you can be aware of your computer screen, and you can be aware of the room that it's in and all these sounds. And now that I mention it, the feeling of your bottom on the chair, all of that. And then there's the highlight, this voice. 2575, he's telling me.
Yeah, don't get hung up on the 25.
Yeah, really.
As John said, it's just an idea that there's that much of your awareness, your focus is on the breath, but you still are very aware of everything else, everything that's coming to all of the sense perceptions, everything else that's happening.
This actually gets very profound because the main problem in samsara, confusion, lack of enlightenment, is that we believe in ourselves and we believe in others. And so we constantly see our lives, our world, our experience in terms of this I other polarity. And those two things, I and other, can behave basically, it gets more complicated, but the fundamental way is in three ways. They can get closer together, which is passion, lust, desire. They can get further away, which is hatred, aggression, fear. And they can stay the same distance, which is ignorance, stupidity, sloth, you might say. And really, all of them are focused on these points. There's me and there's you. There's me and there's it. And we're ignoring the whole environment. We're ignoring everything, the space. We're just focused on the I other and what we're going to get out of it or what it'll do to us. So the first step, and this is what he's talking about here, is to be aware of the environment in which those things happen, the space, because they're constantly arising and passing away in this space of our lives, this space of experience. And so in meditation, we are 75-25. We're aware of the space here, and then the breath is going out into it like a highlight. If we were doing it 100% on the breath, then we'd be doing pure shamatha. And we'd be engaged in a really effortful practice of trying to concentrate on the breath. Fred. Where is Fred? There he is.
Yeah, this practice is so profound. It took me maybe 3 years until I realized that there's something like the depth of this touch and go. And I think they, part of it, in this chapter, what do they say? A leap is involved, a miniature leap. It takes a little effort, but you could feel very refreshed. And I think that leap is you just allow whatever happens naturally on the in-breath to happen. And I've experienced like profound neurotic states of anxiety where I'm gripping so hard, I would feel like I'm going to die on that in-breath. But then you just relax into it and you're like, oh, what am I gripping onto? And then that refreshment kicks in, especially you get like real panic and you can just allow whatever is happening to happen. And it naturally dissolves, which is so profound. This is like, from what I think I remember what you said is like Chogyam Trungpa would teach Hinayana with like a Vajrayana twist. And this is the twist.
You bet, got it. Yeah. I mean, no Hinayana teacher teaches this kind of thing. It's really, it's so Vajrayana. He's leading us into the Vajrayana. You see, this whole thing of resting in space, ultimately, when it becomes perfected, becomes the highest form of meditation. If you could even call it meditation, it really becomes enlightenment itself. It's the perfection of awareness practice. That's going out, the highlight of the breath. It dissolves, the 25% dissolves, and then there's just 100%. The 75 becomes 100 for however long. It might just be an instant. Out breath, dissolve, here we are. This is the practice.
And
Yes, Don.
it sounds, I'm trying to find it now. I can't find it in the book, but I think he mentioned that with the in-breath, there may be like some awareness of physical sensation or the body. Is that, did I read that right?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I'll have to find that.
I'm not recalling that, and the whole little chapter on breath, he's pretty clear that to treat all of the in-breath as just, you know, to basically ignore it.
Yeah, you just ignore it. And it can become a problem, because if you're trying to ignore it, it becomes like trying not to think of
Right.
whatever, huh?
Right,
Whatever.
exactly. Yeah, don't think of a pink elephant. Right, yeah.
Right, exactly.
Purple rhino.
I struggled with that quite a bit when I was first meditating.
Me too, and not anymore. I think of it as a reset. That's what I say to myself, but that's just my idiosyncratic.
Well, I think in the previous chapter or two, they talk about on the in-breath or like the gap, you could work on the posture.
That's good.
Well, he does say an interesting thing here. His instruction is you go out with, you realize that you're thinking and you return to the posture. He says that
Oh,
several times.
yeah, the posture.
And,
That's right.
and I thought that was interesting. I didn't expand on it when I was doing the reading because I was a little unclear about what that means. I know that it's a good idea sometimes, especially if you've been really lost in thought, because mind follows body, vice versa. If your mind is wandering off, returning here, you may find that your body, your posture's changed. It's a good idea to check occasionally. But you return to the posture. I thought that was interesting.
In other contexts, he has said that labeling thoughts thinking is optional. In these chapters, it doesn't sound that way. And personally, I'm finding it very powerful. I'm doing it more, labeling my thoughts thinking. I'm doing it a lot more. I really recommend to try it.
It's good. I think it's good practice, and especially if I'm drowsy or really agitated, to actually. A teacher once told me to kind of say it under my breath, like thinking. Really kind of puts a pin in it. And then you can loosen up a bit and relax a little more, and then just recognize that it's a thought.
Oh,
Hi. A couple of questions. So I think last week you mentioned that we're sitting there in the six awarenesses or six. It was the number six, so I assumed it, and I think it was actually stated it was the five physical senses and then also thinking. Right.
Six objects of awareness, or
Six.
yeah, six types of phenomena.
So we could focus on that, and that there's these six. But if are we supposed to try to open up another faculty by not listening to those, not sensing? We're not focusing on sight. We're not focusing on what we're hearing. We're not focusing. What other is that? Describe another type of meditation. I know it's not this, but
The space contains visual objects, sounds, tactile sensations, odors when they happen, tastes when they happen, and thoughts. But all of them are not separate from, they're all part of the space. It's like this gesture, you can't freeze it. It's just the space changing color. These sounds are just the space changing sound. So you go out, dissolve, and rest in this space, whatever it may be. It can be visual, tactile, auditory, doesn't matter.
They're called the six nobles
Yeah, nobles, right? Yeah, yeah.
because it's
And
everything. It's all you can know,
well,
sort of.
again, and I guess I don't know if it was a different reading or a different technique or ideation that comes from what I've experienced when become so aware of it, of those, and then let those go, and there's something else there that I haven't already been experiencing, which is always here anyway. You just don't know it. I don't know it because I'm always focused on these other six.
Well, like right now, you're just looking at your screen and me, my image. It's that simple. That's the space. Whatever happens to be showing up in it doesn't matter. It's all good.
Yeah. I guess because it being so simple is like a Maharishi holding up a flower. Yes, it's beautiful. It's because there's not a ton of fanfare and advertising and there's no commercialism in it. It's just here and it's so simple. It's missed and it's in its simplicity. It's it's transcendent or it's just it's beyond words.
Trungpa Rinpoche, I'm quoting him, he said, it's so simple. That's why nobody gets it.
This is something I wanted to say earlier. I think where they were talking about the out breath, the touch, and then the let go. I read the book, and there's a little description in the first paragraph there, and it seems like he's saying that the touch is to be aware, I know, and then when I let go, so by not knowing, by not cognating, by not it's sort of like a moment, a very small a moment of innocence to just allow something else again, to allow my awareness to expand,
To be whatever it is.
where yeah, to let go. Is there something else to open up to the gap? What is there?
I think the easiest way to do it is that you are aware of the breath, that's the touch, and it dissolves into this space. And when it's dissolved, that's the go. It's gone.
What I noticed is that when I let go, there's something else there, and it's fear. It could be a lot, and I think it's I've experienced it before. It's something else that it's sort of like a negative thought. So maybe there's an awareness sitting there in my conscience, and when I let go, it becomes present. And I'm not afraid to sense that because just like you said, a negative thought when we or anger, a sense of anger, if we just look at it, it will dwindle. So by just being aware of that presence of this other feeling that I'm having, in time it will dwindle. Maybe it's repressed feelings or something. I don't know.
I think it's just a way of being hard on yourself.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. I signed up for that.
Okay. So let that go. It's a waste of time.
Okay.
It's another form of ego.
Yeah.
Ego's job is to be hard on yourself. And that reinforces where it gives ego some existence because ego has a job. When you let that go and you stop being hard on yourself, ego's gone. So it's just a way of keeping I alive by giving it this job of beating yourself up.
Thank you.
Frederick.
Yeah, that's where labeling things as thinking can help. You know, when we don't realize that we're constantly poking at ourselves or commenting on a situation without getting too attached to the emotional story of it. Just like, oh, I'm thinking again. Okay. We got to recognize that we're always constantly doing this in one way or another.
Yeah.
Till we're not.
This is so profound, this stuff. It's amazing. Supposedly beginning teachings.
Well, it's really the heart of it. Mecca, I think, or
Micah, you're muted.
So I really don't understand the paragraph about boredom. I don't understand it on two levels. I don't understand it, the statement, cool boredom is hopelessness at its most absolute level. I just don't understand what that means. But I also don't understand it because I have to say, it is not because I'm not that experienced a meditator, but it has never been my experience, even to the slightest degree, that I have felt bored while meditating.
Wow.
It has just never occurred. And it usually doesn't occur because meditation is a bit of a struggle, even though I know the goal is not to struggle, and I struggle not to struggle. Um, the process generally is one of breathing out and breathing in naturally, going out with my breath, and then at some point, usually rather quickly, but at some point, some thought overtakes me. And I exist in that overtaken thought space until I realize what's going on. And then there's this moment when I realize what's going on, that there's this little battle, because some part of me wants to say, but this is a really good thought. We should really continue thinking this. And then I have to say, no, wait, I'm meditating now. This is thinking. And then the breathing out process starts again. But there is never a moment of boredom or something I can experience as boredom. So I just don't know what he's talking about. That's all.
Terrific. Sounds like you've got really great, cool boredom, Micah.
I maybe, but it's all Greek to me.
Yeah, because it's really the essence of cool boredom is that you are accepting your state of mind. You're not fighting it. Hot boredom is you're fighting it. And that's good practice.
But why call it boredom?
Well, when it's just a matter of. I also wonder if Micah, well, let's leave it as it is. But if we do a week ton, where we're going to sit for a week,
Mm-hmm.
come, you're invited.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And the longer you sit, the more you have to deal with boredom. Simple. Right?
Whatever that is.
Nodding, yes. It just becomes more of an issue. But I don't see any problem. Just if you're practicing, that's great. Let's not go looking for problems where there aren't any, or where they're small.
Don has something, and also we have a few minutes left. I would like to hear from somebody who hasn't had a question or comment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify in chapter 28, under the heading A Sense of Being, the last sentence, it says, when you commit yourself to the Dharma, you are asking somebody to mind your business, which could happen very heavy-handedly. So you do not need to feel too much concern about future security. I didn't quite catch what he was saying there. You're asking somebody to mind your business, which could happen very heavy-handedly, so you do not have to feel too much concern about future security. But what is the point he's trying to make there?
Well, he's getting very advanced here, or more
Okay.
advanced. The further you go down the path, the deeper or the more powerful the connection with the teacher becomes. And the more, what can you say, heavy-handed the teacher becomes, especially the most so in the Vajrayana. And so that I think that's really what he's alluding to. But when you enter the Vajrayana, there are all kinds of warnings about this. They say entering the Vajrayana is like a snake entering a piece of bamboo, can't turn around. So you better really know what you're doing, have made the commitment consciously. But also the relationship with the teacher becomes more and more demanding as you proceed along the path. At the Hinayana stage of the path, the relationship with the teacher is a preceptor, an example, giving you the teachings to practice and demonstrating them in his or her being. But they're very sort of removed. They're not close to you compared to what happens later. At the Mahayana stage of the path, the teacher becomes much more involved with you, and it becomes a very, very close and intimate friend. And they call the name of the teacher becomes spiritual friend, in fact, Kalyana Mitra in Sanskrit. At the Vajrayana stage of the path, the teacher becomes very dangerous. Because you're making this commitment to him or her, and it can get interesting, dicey, painful. Doesn't have to. Anybody else who hasn't spoken?
I can see.
Miriam.
Yeah, just to go back to Don's point, the way I understood it is that yes, you become sort of the Dharma takes charge of your life almost, and maybe it's a surrendering to the Dharma, and as a result, you don't need to worry about your life, worry about, okay, well, how do I deal with this? How am I going to take care of that? There's I don't know. It just seemed like you could relinquish control.
Thank you. That's very profound. Seems to me.
I like that.
Huh?
I like that.
Yeah, me too. It's just, and it can be scary.
Well, it kind of reminds me of maybe like in a way, don't get too much into sorting out details, because that kind of maybe that goes back to like the tick, that analogy of the tick that's filling up, like getting caught up in philosophical ideas about self and non-self. It sort of seems like you're saying don't worry about that right now. Something, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, the path is quite, yes. Tanya, you're muted. You're muted still.
There we go.
Yep.
Would you be able to tell me a little bit more about breath and thought not happening at the same time?
About what?
Breath and thoughts not happening at the same time, or being one with the breath?
Well, meditation, one way of talking about it is that it's about giving up what Barry alluded to in his talk, the watcher. The watcher is a voice that sits in our head, and it's constantly commenting on the action. It's saying, oh, that's good, oh, that's bad, be careful of the other, pursue this, don't pursue that, and it's making these evaluative comments. I always thought when I listened to Trungpa Rinpoche describe the watcher, it's an extra. You don't need it. It's this judgment. I always thought of it as like a parrot sitting on my shoulder with a Keystone cop hat, on top, saying, oh, that's good, oh, that's bad, oh, don't go there, like that. And we constantly, have the watcher in our lives, in our brains, as we walk through our days. Meditation is about letting the watcher go, giving up the watcher, that you don't need the watcher. So when you go out with the breath and you are the breath and the breath dissolves and then there's just space, the watcher is gone for however long. Might just be an instant, might be longer. And then it comes back. And it says, ooh, that was good. Does that answer this or get to this?
Yep. Yeah, I think so. I just know sometimes on my out breath, I do like the sound just a little bit and the sensation. And if I'm thinking that's sometimes I'm thinking, does that distract me from really being letting go at those times? But I like the sensation of the breath.
In fact, there's a lot of talk about flow states that athletes get into and other types of musicians, perhaps. The absence of the watcher. I used to be a technical rock climber for many years. And confidence is key. And what confidence is the absence of the watcher. The watcher is all about lack of confidence. The watcher saying, oh, be careful about this. Oh, that could happen, Oh, watch this. Oh, that's good. No, that's bad. That's what the watcher's doing. And when you do that, I remember I was doing a technical problem. You set up what's called a top rope that protects you, and you go do something very, very hard. And I was doing it with a friend of mine, a guy named Jim Logan. And Jim went up and I belayed him, and he went up and he did the problem successfully, just like that. It was really, really difficult. And then it was my turn, and I went up and I tried it and I fell. And I swung, I hung from the rope. That's what you do. And then I got back to where I had started the difficult point, and I tried it again. I tried it 3 times, and I couldn't do it. And finally, he lowered me off. And I got down to the ground, and he said to me, you know what you're doing wrong? And I expected him to say, you should have put your hand here and your foot there, but, some instruction like that. And I said, what? What am I doing wrong? And he said, you're thinking, I'm not sure if I can do this. That's the watcher. It's always self-doubt. And that's what we need to give up. The watcher is an expression of self-doubt, and it impedes us. There's a wrathful deity back there on the wall. He's the one of the wrathful depictions of wisdom. In that particular one, his main job is to kill the demon of self-doubt, the watcher.
Guess what? We're out of time.
Oh my gosh, we are. So I'll put the chants up and we'll say who's leading. Anybody want to lead? Don?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Let's see. Yep.
Okay. Hold on.
We'll close by reciting a prayer for peace and the dedication of merit earned by our practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. By the blessings of enlightened and compassionate ones, by the power of my positive actions of 3 times and my prayers of pure aspiration, may wars, conflicts, epidemics, and all other maladies dissolve in this world, and may the earth and all who live on this earth enjoy the abundance of well-being. May all learn to live lovingly with each other. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Barry.
Buddy.
Thank you, Barry. Thanks, John.
Great
Thanks,
discussion.
Thank you,
everybody.
Barry. Thank
Thank you,
you.
John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you
all.
so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Good night.